First and 10.
Oh, this is pure effort play.
Gibbs was in motion. Outside it goes. LaPorta.
Woo!
Gets by Josie Jewell.
Power.
To the pylon.
Wow.
19-yard touchdown pass by Goff to his celebrated rookie
Broncos
tight
country?
end,
Let's
Sam
ride.
LaPorta.
I can't
LaPorta
not
caught passes of 18 and the touchdown.
Welcome back, sports fans. Thank you for returning for another video. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. We are now through the hangover period of the 2024 NFL Draft. We've hit that sort of lull, the downtime of the NFL before we get to the meat and bones of the 2024 NFL season. But what a better time than now to start looking at those important pieces to the 2024 Lions that I think will ultimately lead them to a championship. So today we're going to start out real hot. We're going to look at what I think may be the Lions' most important player, tight end Sam LaPorta. Let's go. And before we get into our player profile series, make sure to like the video if you're digging the vibe here at Johnny Gaz Sports. Hit that subscription button and notify bell so you don't miss any future videos on the channel. We are on the road to 500 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for your time watching all the videos. I cannot say how much I appreciate it. Now let's dive into today's topic. In 2019, the Lions took a tight end out of Iowa in the first round of the NFL Draft. That tight end's name was TJ Hockenson. Now, it took TJ some time to acclimate himself in the NFL, but he did turn himself into a very reliable tight end. And in the 2022 season at the trade deadline, when the Lions were truly in a tough spot, I believe they're at 1 or 2-7 at the time and really looking for answers, the organization decided to trade TJ Hockenson to the Minnesota Vikings and receive a flurry of picks back in return. I think the idea at that time was the organization knew they couldn't afford to pay a tight end when they knew they needed several other pieces to put this team in a position where they could compete in the NFC and for a Super Bowl. So they make that trade to Minnesota. We know what happened at the end of the 2022 NFL season. The Lions go on a pretty good run, ending the season with a victory in Lambeau. And they head into the 2023 NFL Draft, which we've talked about in great detail. But as part of that draft in the second round, they draft another tight end out of Iowa, Sam LaPorta. Sam LaPorta put up an historic 2023 rookie season, which we're going to talk about here in detail. So much so that I'm going to make the argument to you today that Sam LaPorta is the most important player on the Detroit Lions as we head into 2024. Sam LaPorta is 6'3" at 245 pounds, and he is only 23 years old as we'll be entering the 2024 NFL season. Let's take it back. Sam LaPorta went to Highland High School in Illinois, where he was both a wide receiver and defensive back. So starting right there, you can see that he was in an athletic position, multiple athletic positions, even back in high school. Obviously, we know he went to the University of Iowa from 2019 to 2022. University of Iowa is known for being tight end university, and we'll go through many of the tight ends to come out of the University of Iowa here in just a little bit. He was first team Big Ten in 2022. He was named the Hawkeye Team Hustle Award in 2021 and a team captain in 2022. He was selected by the Lions in round 2 at pick 34, just ahead of Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer, which if you think back to the NFL draft at that time, Michael Mayer was said to be the best tight end in the class. But obviously the Lions and Brad Holmes felt differently as they went ahead and drafted Sam LaPorta ahead of Michael Mayer, again as their second round pick at pick number 34. And as we've done several mock draft videos over the last several weeks and did the draft review, we've looked at the Lions selections here in the 2024 NFL Draft and talked in detail about what the strategy, what the overall organizational picture is as they move forward. And this really goes back to before this draft, but really holds true in the Sam LaPorta draft. You know, we've talked about the other picks involved in that 2023 NFL Draft, but really the organization, Brad Holmes, decided that this was the player that they wanted, even ahead of the consensus best tight end on the board. And obviously it turned out to be everything more than true. But this has been the Lions' MO, and it really shines here in this example. The Lions identified a guy that they wanted, and they were not afraid to pick him at a spot that may have been ahead of where a lot of other teams would have picked Sam LaPorta. Again, obviously they seem to know better, and it's held true through the 2023 NFL season. So if we're going to make the argument that Sam LaPorta is the most important player to the Detroit Lions, obviously statistics are going to play a huge part in that. Now, we all know that Sam LaPorta had an historic 2023 NFL season. I mean, look at the stats here. He had 86 catches for 889 yards and 10 touchdowns. Okay, that's the most receptions by a rookie tight end in NFL history, and he was close to the yardage record and the touchdown record. I believe it's Mike Ditka that holds the yardage and touchdown record. So it's an incredible start to an NFL career. Not only that, but through the Ben Johnson offense, you could tell not only at the beginning of the season, but as they progressed through the season, they trusted him more and more. You know, I think he was always going to be a safety net as far as being a catcher, a yard after catch guy. But I think what they found more so in Sam LaPorta than anything else is he can be trusted as an inline blocker. So they used him in a lot of different schemed running game areas where other tight ends just don't fit the bill. You know, you usually get guys who are good at catching the football, more athletic guys, or more so the blocker tight ends. And Sam LaPorta seems to be a mix of both. So he's really been valuable to the Lions even through his rookie season. And we've talked so much about needing to insulate the quarterback, Jared Goff, to ultimately keep him at his elite status. Well, Sam LaPorta might be the biggest example of that. To insulate Jared Goff, he was used as that security blanket. I mean, he had 18 catches that moved the chains on third down in 2023, which is second among all tight ends. It's just incredible. He also scored 8 times in the red zone, which led the entire NFL. That is incredible. So, I mean, he is that security blanket for not only Jared Goff, but the offense in general, because he can be used in so many different ways. So to me, that is maybe the most important argument when looking at who is that most important player on the Detroit Lions. It's truly amazing that entering year 2, he's already considered one of the best at his position. And with another statistical season like he had in 2023, I think we can start making the argument that he may enter the realm of best tight end in football. I mean, we're talking about guys like Travis Kelce, you know, guys like George Kittle, the 2 tight ends that played in the Super Bowl. Sam LaPorta had a season comparable to those 2 guys. Now, I'm not saying he's hit that status or he's there yet. He needs to compile a few seasons of this to ultimately prove that. But that's the greatness that was the 2023 season for Sam LaPorta. I mean, listen to some of these accolades. This is incredible. He's the first tight end to have 5 plus receptions in each of their first 3 games of their career. He's the first tight end to have 60-plus receptions, 675-plus yards, and 6-plus touchdowns through their first 12 games of their NFL career. He's got the most receptions by a tight end in a rookie season, 86. He's the first rookie tight end to tally at least 70 receptions, 700 yards, and 8 touchdowns in a single season. And he was tied for the most touchdowns by a rookie in the Super Bowl era. It's amazing. That's NFL records, not withstanding the Lions franchise records that he broke. Most receptions by a tight end single season, most receptions by a tight end for a rookie, most receiving yards by a tight end, most receiving touchdowns, most receiving yards in a game. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The stats speak for themselves. He is extremely versatile. He's got good hands. He can run after catch. He's tough. I mean, we talked about him coming out of Iowa as a captain, as winning the Mr. Hustle Award. I had a previous video here where we talked about the NFL draft and how the Lions really like team captains, like guys that have showed leadership characteristics in college and then obviously as they enter the pros. And that seems to be holding true with Sam LaPorta. He stepped in mini camp and training camp, and the coaches seem to have faith and trust in him. Jared Goff developed trust in him. And, you know, he was second-team All-Pro honors as a rookie in the NFL as a tight end. And that's not an easy transition type position to do in the NFL. And before we go past this, I mean, the stats to me alone are just so incredible. Look at the recent games, okay? The Dallas game, Minnesota, then obviously as we enter the playoffs in the Rams, Tampa Bay, and San Francisco. He was so involved in all of those games. Now, we know what happened in Minnesota, or the injury that he sustained in Detroit as they played Minnesota to end the season there. And that's something I want to bring up. I mean, he had hyperextended that knee. It looked just awful when it took place. They carted him off the field, and at that time, I remember thinking he was done. It was it. It's over. He's got dislocated knee. He's got MCL, ACL. Could have been everything. But and I remember Dan Campbell coming out and after the game having the press conference saying, well, it was bad news, but it wasn't the worst news. I think it was something to that extent. And even at that point, I'm thinking he's out. Well, he then comes back for the playoff game, and then it all held true through Tampa Bay and San Francisco. What a tough guy. I mean, I think we certainly dodged a bullet there a little bit, so there's a little bit of luck that plays into that. But my point in all that is as he got hurt, the fear was that losing Sam LaPorta was going to affect the offense so much as they go in to face the Rams in the playoffs that was going to be their downfall. We know that didn't happen. Sam LaPorta came back. He did not have his greatest performance against the Rams. You see here 3 receptions for 14 yards, but he did have a touchdown. Same thing, he scored a touchdown in Minnesota. So, there was a lot of talk about if he couldn't play, would the Lions offense fall off? And although we didn't have to see it, I think that fear was there because he was so involved, especially at that point in the season, last few games and into the playoffs. So again, to support my argument as the most important player, we could not afford to lose him as we entered the 2023 NFL playoffs. And I would be worried if that had been the case. And I'm sure a lot of Lions fans would support that. As far as fantasy numbers, I'm sure any fantasy player that owned Sam LaPorta last year came out of it extremely happy. He finished with the most points of any tight end in fantasy football, and I really see that holding true in the next season. He will be a top priority pick for any fantasy football player next season. Now let's look at the Lions depth chart. I mean, we know Sam LaPorta is their money tight end, TE1, but behind him is where it gets a little interesting. We talked about in previous videos the San Francisco 49ers extending the offer to Brock Wright. Well, the Lions ended up matching that offer and extending Brock Wright, bringing him back as their backup tight end, which I think was a really good move. If they weren't going to make any other moves as far as free agents on that end of it, I think bringing Brock Wright back is a key component to this. Because if for some reason, knock on wood, there was a Sam LaPorta injury, I think the Lions have a lot of faith in Brock Wright. He's been around the system and the organization for several seasons. And again, it's kind of your security blanket as your tight end too. Behind that, again, you have more questions. James Mitchell, Shane Zylstra. Zylstra's kind of shown a flash here and there, but Mitchell hasn't had a lot of production. So it's really leaning Sam LaPorta heavy, and then obviously Brock Wright as your backup. But I look at this more so to kind of pinpoint the fact that we haven't really made a lot of splash in the wide receiver room. Again, in previous videos, we've talked about maybe a need there at wide receiver, and we know the Lions didn't take one in the NFL draft. They did bring in some undrafted free agent wide receivers, which you hope will compete for a roster spot. And they also brought in an undrafted free agent tight end as well out of BYU. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name now, but he was a team captain there. So maybe, again, you have a depth piece, and that sort of will round out the depth chart for the Lions. But what's very important to look at here is the fact that, yes, your number one target and the guy that you extended this offseason and you feel so good about is Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god. But then your second option is really where Sam LaPorta, I think, comes into play here. The Lions are hoping that you get a step up from Jamison Williams. You have Khalif Raymond, and they also re-signed Donovan Peoples-Jones, so maybe he contributes a little bit more in the 2024 season. But ultimately, I think Sam LaPorta is your option number 2 as far as throwing the football. And again, if we're making the argument that Sam LaPorta is the most important player to the Detroit Lions, well, here he is as a key component and the number 2 option for Jared Goff. And if you lose Sam LaPorta, again, I think they're in a tough spot if they don't add anybody else at wide receiver, or if they don't bolster that tight end room with the undrafted free agent or the wide receivers that they brought in. One of the most intriguing things to think about is, what is the next step for Sam LaPorta? What does the future hold for what was such an amazing rookie tight end season? We mentioned briefly Travis Kelce and George Kittle and all of the tight ends that have come out of the University of Iowa. Well, he is in the mold of those guys and statistically proved himself year 1. So if this trajectory continues, I think the Lions are sitting on a gold mine at tight end. Yes, it's only the second season. He was drafted in the second round, so you're going to have 4 years on a rookie deal, and then you're going to have to think about what to do with Sam LaPorta. And I think it's going to be a lot different than the way that the Lions looked at the TJ Hawkinson situation, because at that time, the organization was in a much different position. You know, certainly win-loss record and what they thought their future held at that point. And, you know, their cap considerations and things that they were looking at that time were a lot different. Well, as we get farther into Sam LaPorta's career, I think he'll prove himself to be one of those pillar players that we've touched on here, so much so in the re-signings of Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Well, I see that sort of with Sam LaPorta with this trajectory. You know, is a 1,000-yard season, is that out of the question for 2024? I really don't think so. I mean, I think the fact that the Lions haven't added a ton of offensive weaponry in this offseason, I think they're comfortable with who they have at wide receiver, and obviously they're comfortable with who they have at tight end. So I expect him to play an even more important piece in the offense and overall for the Detroit Lions in 2024. So I am sitting here making the argument that Sam LaPorta, the tight end, is the most important player to the Detroit Lions here in 2024. Now, it's important that we differentiate most valuable player and most important player, okay? Because I'm not sitting here saying that tight end Sam LaPorta is more valuable to the Lions than, let's say, Jared Goff or let's say Penei Sewell. I wouldn't make that argument because I don't believe that to be the case. But if we're looking at the most important player, I think we go back to things like what were the statistics that he put up? Not just stats, but inline blocking. You know, a comfort level for Jared Goff, that insulation piece for the entire offense. For Ben Johnson to be able to play formations off of one single player. So much so on Sam LaPorta than I think any other player on the Detroit Lions. So to me, he is the most important player. He's not the most valuable player, but he certainly is the most important player. You could also make the argument for several players on defense. Can't get past Aiden Hutchinson, and I certainly wouldn't want to see him go down. The Lions defense would suffer a great deal if he was not in the lineup. But again, I look at the importance of the Sam LaPorta piece to the offense versus the importance of Aiden Hutchinson to the defense. And I think the Lions have done a lot of good moves this offseason to bolster the back end of their defense. They seem to be comfortable with their linebacking crew, and they added a few pieces up on the defensive line to where, again, knock on wood, I don't want any of this to happen, but if Aiden Hutchinson had to miss some time, I think they could get by with the talent that they have around him in that position group and on the rest of the defense. And I don't believe that to be necessarily the case on offense. Yes, they could get by for a short period of time, but I think they'd be extremely limited without Sam LaPorta versus without Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. So what do you guys think? Am I crazy? Is Sam LaPorta the most important Lion? Will he be the most important Lion in 2024? What do you guys think? Tell me who will be that most important player to the Detroit Lions in 2024. Man, I'm getting excited. I know we're in the downtime of the NFL season, but the draft has come and gone. We know what the Lions did in free agency. The schedule is going to be coming out very soon. So this 2024 season is really coming into light. The picture is becoming clearer and clearer, and I'm very excited. So we will continue with this player profile series over the next several weeks. Definitely come back and see me. If you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gaz Sports, definitely hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notify bell so you don't miss any future videos here on the channel. And more than anything else, make sure to take care of yourself. Your mental health is more important than anything else. I want to see you guys come back and have some fun with me on future videos. Thank you guys so much for your time. I will see you very soon.